Hi, we're talking about Your Money Matters on NDTV Profit, and my name is Alex Matthew. We speak about everything money related on this program, and today I'd like to talk about rejection of medical insurance claims. This is something that you might have heard about, you might have gone through it yourself. I've heard about it as well, but this time it was much closer to home. In fact, one of my colleagues said that her claim for maternity benefits as part of a health insurance policy was rejected. At least a significant portion of that claim was rejected, and she went to the Ombudsman for a resolution. The purpose of this conversation is first to help you understand what the process is for you to go to the Ombudsman if you feel that your claim is wrongfully rejected, and then we'll talk about how you should go through this process and what sort of issues you can raise with the Ombudsman, among other things related to health insurance. But first, Hiral Dadia joining me in studio. Hiral, this is not the easiest situation to be in, particularly for a new mother. Take me through what happened in your case.
So thanks, Alex. Firstly, a 10 lakh policy that was sold to me with the caveat that it covers maternity up to 10 lakhs. And you can go to hospitals which have a cashless provision available. Now, this was a policy which was taken back then in 2021. It had a 9-month clause that after you take the policy, you cannot avail of it in the first 9 months.
Waiting period.
Exactly. I availed of it in 2024. Obviously, with the intention when I went to the hospital that it's going to be cashless, maybe only child expenses is what I have to pay for, and some amount of disposables. However, when I had to discharge myself from the hospital, I was given only 2 lakhs out of a total bill of around 7.5 to 8 lakhs.
As cashless.
Exactly. And at that point in time, I was waiting in the hospital for around 8 to 10 hours. With the end of it, I had to pay the remainder. Again, I was told, put it into reimbursement, it will go through. The reimbursements didn't come through, they rejected it under the reasonability clause. And that's when I escalated it to the company's grievance cell. Again, a rejection came from there. And to be honest, a couple of other insurance agents who guided me to go through the Ombudsman, that's when I visited the Mumbai office, sent out an email to their Bima Lokpal with all the relevant documents from your policy details, to your billing details, to your discharge summary, identification proofs, etc. And they said they will take up the case, and depending on how the hearing falls, it'll come through. Though there has been a huge waiting period at Ombudsman because of unavailability of judges, and that's the reason why it's taken 13 to 14 months for the hearing to come. The hearing just happened a couple of days ago where the judge clearly and categorically told the insurer that 1, you should not be mis-selling products. 2, because of insurance companies, the consumer is losing faith and trust in insurance companies. And that's the reason why India's percentage of insured population is low. And 3, if you've sold a policy, you need to adhere to the terms and conditions and not give them and not come out and say that they will not be getting the benefits because you've discontinued the policy.
And you also came across a few other people in a similar situation that had claims rejected for maternity benefits.
Absolutely. So there, what was interesting is in my case, at the same time, a couple of other claims were accepted as well. So that was one story. So that is why we had a strong case. The other thing now, what they're saying is because Ombudsman is taking very long, the other course of action what people are taking is to go to a lawyer, get your papers filed and send out a notice to the insurance company. So you are actually circumventing the Ombudsman.
And going to customer court.
Consumer court.
Consumer court,
And that apparently is giving you a 2 to 3 month period in terms of resolution versus that 13 months that I waited for.
Hiral, thank you so much for sharing this, and I think this is a conversation that a lot of people needed to hear, and hopefully Mahavir Chopra, who's founder and chief executive officer of Beshak.org, joining us now, is going to give us some perspective on that. Mahavir, thanks so much, first of all, for taking the time, and I had you listen to that conversation so that we had context for our conversation. The first is the resolution process for the Ombudsman, which has taken a certain amount of time. what are the kind of things that you would take to the ombudsman? This is, of course, one of them, but what else have you seen being taken to the ombudsman?
Right. So there are a lot of things that can be taken to the ombudsman, right from all individual health insurance and individual policies, meaning all policies that have been bought by individuals, also policies which individuals have bought from banks and others, which are group policies. Even people who are, owners of micro SME organizations or proprietorship firms also fall under basically ombudsman's jurisdiction, where they can file a complaint to ombudsman. That is the aspect where we talk about who can file a claim with ombudsman. The other part of it is what kind of claims can be filed or what kind of complaints can be done. So it's basically right from policy issuance to complaints. Everything basically comes under the scope of an ombudsman's jurisdiction, if I may say that. So, for example, if a policy is not issued, or if the policy is not issued as per the scope that was agreed when the policy was promised, from there to claims, entire claims related, complaints, which could be wrongful payment of claims, like what your colleague faced, or not paying claims on time, or basically those kind of things. The restrictions, however, there are two restrictions, which is one is that the claim amount cannot be above 50 lakhs. So the contesting amount cannot be more than 50 lakhs. If it is above 50 lakhs, then you have to go to the consumer court and file it there. And the second is that you have not filed this complaint anywhere else, right? Which is basically in any other government forum. Right. So these are the two things that are required to be done. And then there is a time limit. So the time limit is basically, one time limit is that you need to file, you need to wait for 30 days before you are able to file a complaint to the ombudsman. So you have to complain first to the insurance company. If the insurance company's grievance cell does not reply to you in the first 30 days or does not reply to you satisfactorily, then you can go and basically make a complaint with ombudsman, and you need to do this within a year of the rejection of the claim. So these are basically three aspects of the complaints process with ombudsman.
Okay, so in this particular case, and let me ask you about this, since we're talking about maternity benefits, and as I understand it, not many insurance companies are offering this product anymore. It's a product that is died down. Mahavir, is that correct, first of all?
Which product are you talking about?
I'm talking about health insurance policies that are sold with a maternity also covered, as in your admission at maternity and the costs associated with it.
No, there are a lot of good policies which now do cover maternity treatment, and there are policies which would give you a cover for the kind of money that just now we spoke about. It's just that there could be a waiting period, like you also mentioned while you were having the conversation with your colleague. But there are enough and more policies that are getting developed where people are being offered maternity, of course, with a waiting period.
Okay. Now, talk to me about this reasonability criteria, because in my colleague's case, what she pointed out is that there were no limits or there were no conditionalities. I have not looked at the fine print of the policy, so I cannot comment on, and I don't expect you to either. But can you explain this reasonability criteria and whether or not this is a gray area and open for interpretation that the insurance company can use?
Yes. So the thing is that we all know that because hospitals are not regulated for billing in India, insurance companies have created their own protective clause, which is called the reasonable and customary clause, where they basically say that if there is an overcharging or some kind of additional charge that a hospital has made, then they would have the right to basically apply this reasonable clause, which is called the reasonable and customary clause, and deduct money. But this has to be done in a very scientific method, which is basically that in the location and the kind of grade of hospital that you have been to, if that specific kind of hospital is charging similar rates, then the reasonable customary clause cannot be applied. But obviously what's happening on ground is that insurers are using this discretionally, and they are making such deductions wherever they feel subjectively that the charges that the hospital has made are high. this actually makes life quite difficult for people who have bought a policy with no limitations, and that's what they basically paid for. And hence, the confusion in the mind of a customer when they get this reasonable and customary clause deduction is obviously very, very valid. Like, because they are not responsible for what a hospital charges to them. They are basically expecting that whatever is supposed to be paid as per the hospital's charges will be paid by the insurance company, because there are no limitations in the policy.
Yeah, and that's a fair point that you make. What I'm trying to understand is, how is this possible for a cashless situation, and how did this emerge, where suddenly at the time of discharge the insurance company comes and says, hey, you know what, we'll service 2 lakh out of the entire claim cashless, the rest you file as reimbursement. Should that be happening at all?
Absolutely not. See, if the policy scope clearly says this, right, that there is no limitation in the policy, and like I said, that if it is basically whatever has been charged by the hospital is their standard tariff rate, and is what is being charged to anybody else, basically irrespective in the same grade of hospital in the same geographical area, then a reasonable and customary clause cannot be applied. It can only and should be applied when there is a clear, proof, a very, very clear proof that the hospital has overcharged, and where, the customer does not have to pay, it is deducted from the hospital's payment.
Understood. Now, let's talk about a few instances, or actually, before we get to that, I want to cover that aspect that Hiral just spoke about, which is that she's come across, or she's heard of situations where the ombudsman is being circumvented because of the duration of time that it takes to get a resolution. Is that something that you would advise people to do, or would you say that the first port of call should always be the ombudsman for a resolution?
Yeah, in our view, going to the ombudsman is the first port of call. I totally agree with what your colleague mentioned about that it may take a lot of time, but what happens with ombudsman is that the case, when it's filed with an ombudsman, cannot be basically contested further by the insurance company as per the Ombudsman Act, right? It is something that it is binding on an insurance company, right? And there is also a 5,000 rupees fine per day if the reward is not paid to the customer within 30 days of the reward being established by the ombudsman, right? These things would not happen in a regular court, because when you go to court, then there could be multiple years of litigation that will be possible, because there are multiple upper courts that are there, and insurance company can take you further down on multiple levels of the jurisdiction that are available, right to Supreme Court. So we have seen those cases also where it has taken 15 years, 20 years also for claims to get passed.
Wow, okay, so that's a significant point to bear in mind. So therefore, let's talk about how to approach the ombudsman. Already Hiral has pointed out what she followed as the process. She went to the physical location and she gave certain documentation. But assuming that somebody comes to you for advice, Mahavir, and is saying, look, I have this claim that has gotten wrongfully rejected in my opinion, how should I approach the ombudsman?
Yeah, this is actually what happens with us on a daily basis with our platform, where people come and reach us to understand how do they file a claim, because of our independent nature of our platform, because we're not associated with any insurance company. So from that perspective, the steps are very simple. In fact, it's become extremely simple, because now for a good number of years, you can also go online and apply for, you can also complain online. So you just have to you can just search online for the Insurance Ombudsman website and apply online, right? You can make a complaint online. It has to be done in the process that I mentioned, that you first complain to the insurance company. You've not received a satisfactory response or not received a response in 30 days. After that has happened, you can go and file it with the ombudsman, and the ombudsman would have a specific form that you will have to fill through, which will require all the details that what Monali mentioned. After that happens is what there would be it would start showing online, like typically how you order a thing online, it shows you a tracker online. The Ombudsman website has a tracker which will tell you what is the status of your complaint and where it has reached. And then you do not have to go anywhere. You just have to wait for the time when it comes for hearing. And the hearings also happen on video calls. So you don't even have to move out of your office or from your home to basically attend the hearing. So that's how convenient it is. Of course, there are some areas where there could have been better. There is a room for significant amount of improvement, which is around time. But yeah, apart from that, it is quite convenient to do this.
All right. And so is it normal to have a time for resolution of as much as a year or more, or is this a fringe case?
We have heard of this, and there have been cases where it has taken a lot of time, and it is not. There is no pattern to this. If the specific ombudsman, like for example, the Mumbai ombudsman has significant more cases than, let's say, another city would have. So there could be a like kind of an overburdened kind of a office, and because of which there could be a delay versus some other city which may not have this kind of a situation. The other situation could be where a office is vacant for a good period of time. Like for example, in the Bombay Ombudsman, if I'm not wrong, it was vacant for some time, about 3-4 months ago, if I'm not wrong. So those kind of situations basically could lead to delay, but I would still say that people will have to be patient with the process, because yes, there we have seen enough many more cases where it does take good amount of time, and you need to be patient with the system.
Okay, couple more things to talk about. One is how do you avoid your claim being rejected in the first place? I guess the first thing to do would be to have a cashless claim. Would you agree?
Yes, meaning before that, basically, there are three areas that I would typically recommend anybody who's looking at buying a health insurance. Is that first, ensure that you've understood the main contours of the agreement that you're signing with the insurance company. A policy that you're buying is a contract with the insurance company, and hence understand what are the key terms of the policy, what are the financial limitations in the policy. That's one thing that needs to be understood. Second is choose the insurer very diligently. Do not just go by an insurer because someone else or your friend has bought a policy, or someone is pushing you to buy a policy. Read through, understand what is the kind of governance that insurance company follows. There are a lot of tracking methods by which you can find out how an insurance company does well. There are a lot of ratios that you can look at on multiple websites, including our website. And the third is basically, which is something that I keep talking about and is a very, very significant amount, is to have the right kind of advisor on your side. Because the entire post-sales process in India, and like we're seeing with the ombudsman also, it takes time and it has a system and it's kind of broken to a certain extent. Having the right kind of professional expert on your side makes a huge difference, because they can actually help you represent the case well. They can actually handhold you through the process and tell you that, okay, this is the kind of time it will take. And it will actually help you, at the time when you need it the most. Yeah. So these are the three things: the right product, the right insurer, and in my view, the right expert on your side.
Yeah. All right. So important points that we've spoken about with regard to resolution through an ombudsman route. But while we're speaking about health insurance, there's another aspect that I want to talk about, which is whether you're getting enough bang for your buck, so to speak. Because a lot of people, particularly those that are senior citizens, are saying that health insurance premiums are going up very substantially. And I saw a post that you did on social media of somebody that was paying a significant amount of money for a policy that was not worthwhile. What are the rules that they should follow to ensure that they get the right value?
Right. So it is a standard cost benefit analysis, meaning first find out what is the benefit. Typically, the example that I had given is that a person had a 1.5 lakh sum insured policy, but with a 28,000 premium that had come up for renewal. So it looked quite okay on the face value, that 28,000 rupees premium for someone who's 83 years old for a 1.5 lakhs cover. But when you dig a little bit deeper, you come to know that it was a kind of an outdated policy which had room rent limits which were of just 1,500 rupees per day. It had other surgery related, treatment related limits, which were also significantly, curtailing the actual cover that the person had. And from that perspective, the effective cover that we were able to calculate on that 1.5 lakhs of cover that the person had was just around 75,000 rupees. So the call that needs to be taken is that basically find out what is the real effective amount of claim that you would get, and compare that with the premium that you're paying. In this specific case, it was 28,000 rupees of premium, and the effective cover was coming to around 75,000 rupees because of the limitations. And hence we said that, this is not the kind of premium that really makes sense for someone who's 83 years old. And because the family was also slightly well-to-do and they were able to take care of it and absorb the cost, we basically recommended that they can basically drop from the policy and take it on their own, basically, and kind of have their own funds to manage it.
And that will likely be the case for a lot of people. Would you agree, Mahavir? Purely because we've seen so many insurance companies raise the premium charges.
It could be the case specifically if it's a very old policy and it has significant restrictions, like what I mentioned, like if there are restrictions on room rent limit, if there are restrictions on how much you can basically basically claim for a large surgery, and if there are other limits like or conditions like copay. If it's a restrictive policy and then the premium is very high, it has to be looked at on a case-to-case basis. There are good policies which do not have restrictions, and in that case, the cost benefit could be way better, and hence you could maybe continue. There was a case which happened around a year back with another person on Twitter itself who wanted to discontinue the policy, and we asked them to continue the policy, and it actually helped because there was a claim that came in 6 months later. So both, it has to be looked at in a case-to-case manner.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Like anything else that you would buy and pay money for, right? So, Mahavir, thanks so much for joining in, for having this conversation with us. Important one to have.
Yeah, thank you, Alex.
All right. So that's about health insurance. Now, like I said, we discuss a lot of things money related over the course of the week. And on our special weekly show, Money Wise, this week, I spoke with Ramesh Damani, and that plays out tomorrow at 5 p.m. We spoke about Warren Buffett, his own investment guru. And here's what he had to say about how Indian investors should look at investing.
India is a young country. A lot of investors are young in India. So you want to first save more than you spend. That's the first thing out there. And secondly, what you save, you want to put in appreciating assets rather than depreciating assets, because that's what will go up. So if you go out and spend on a car or a phone, you'll feel nice, but it'll depreciate down in value. But if you buy a common stock or something that can appreciate, you'll probably make better gains out there. So start young, invest in appreciating assets, and what Buffett has taught us so vividly is learn how to compound money. Compounding is a magic that people need to understand, that Buffett has taught us, that if you double your money every 3 years, I think in 12 years you'll have 16x your money. There's one Warren Buffett quote which I don't remember exactly, but what he said is if you want to get from the middle class to the money class, all you need is 30 years, a bull market, and the ability to compound money, and you'll get there. You can start with almost any amount of money, Alex, and which is the point I always tell investors. You can start with almost any amount of money. If you do it successfully for a 30-year period, which is your professional life, 30 years you would have 1000x the money that you started off with. 1000x the money. Wow. Do that on a computer spreadsheet and see for yourself. You double your money every 3 years. What happens in 30 years? It is extraordinary, and that path is open to everybody. It's the path is already laid out by Warren Buffett, and we just have to climb that path.
Watch out for that conversation on Friday at 5 p.m. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Your Money Matters. Thanks so much for watching. This is NDTV Profit.